Well, welcome back from lunch, everybody. We're here for a pretty exciting and dynamic panel this afternoon. We're here to talk about strengthening national security, the critical nexus of academia, defense, and strategic investment. So this morning I went out for a walk along the beach to watch the sun come up to sort of collect my thoughts for today's conversation. And I was sort of thinking about the idea of, sort of like, why is this topic so relevant and really why is it relevant to Florida and eMERGE in the conference, right? So eMERGE is now in its 11th year, which I think is absolutely amazing. This is my second year here, and we were fortunate enough to experience the first year that they've decided to bring dual-use defense tech to join the health tech and the AI and the quantum that's been the cornerstone of what eMERGE has been all about. And as I was out on that walk, there was this display of sort of the history of Miami South Beach and how it was used during World War II for boot camp and for training before our military deployed. And I thought that really tied it all together. And there's going to be a little interesting anecdote that we're going to bring up about that later. So it really just, tied everything together. But the real essence of why this topic is just so important and so relevant is that, freedom isn't free. And we can't take it for granted. And what that really means is we have to invest in it. We have to invest in the strategic technology that's going to continue to give us an edge. And I've got an amazing panel here that we're going to get into some of those topics, today. So my name is Sean Drake. I'm the founder of Stony Lonesome Group. We're a Tampa, Florida-based venture capital firm with a 14-year track record specifically in dual-use defense-first technology. Our investment thesis from day one has been to mission-focused investing, make money for our investors, but truly have an impact on national security and veteran care. By way of background, I'm a West Point graduate, a former Army infantry officer, and in the world of invest in what you know, that's how we came up with the mission-focused thesis. But Stony Lonesome Group truly is a group. Some of the other members of our team include the former acting secretary of the Army. We do a lot of cyber investing. We have the former CISO of the entire Air Force. And, one of my key partners at Stony Lonesome Group, who I believe is out there in the audience, Lieutenant General Brooks Bash, commanded the unit that flew Air Force One, served on 2 national security councils, and on 9/11, he was the senior military officer in the White House Situation Room when that event occurred. So with that, I'm going to ask my colleagues to go ahead and self-introduce themselves, a little bit about your background and sort of what you're involved with in your mission at your organizations.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Behar. I have the honor of serving as Provost, Executive Vice President, and Chief Operating Officer of FIU. Florida International University, based in Miami, is 52 years young. We consider it America's public research university of the future. We are powered by 56,000 students. The future of South Florida, the future of our nation, is being educated by public research universities. We are the 4th largest in the country. We have over 300,000 alum. Powering on all cylinders, law, medicine, business, industry, innovation, technology. Proud to say and humbled to serve that we've just launched our FIU 2030 Experience Impact Strategic Plan, which is really talking about where we are today. The moment that we have here today in Miami, the moment of FIU, the synergy as the unofficial capital of Latin America, and why the conversation around national security has never been more important than it is today.
And maybe I brought up the idea of Miami and the history of Miami and the richness of the military heritage here. And you shared an interesting fact with me when we were getting ready for this, but I'd love for the audience to experience that as well.
Absolutely, thank you. So yes, the history of Miami. Certainly, we all love the community that we're in, whether we're here full-time or part-time. But certainly in Miami, with all of the work that Sean identified post-World War II and training, the GI Bill launched the University of Miami, one of our critical partners, which really transformed the community of Miami and South Florida, which led to the charter of FIU. So FIU is here, FIU today is here as a result of all of that work that Sean talked about, as a result of preparing and securing our nation's security and global security as a result of World War II.
Well, we look forward to hearing how the university is going to continue to carry that forward later on in our conversation today. So with that, General Hawk, over to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Thank you, Elizabeth. Really honored to be here today with everyone. And I want to start out just piling on about your strategic context that you brought up. I think it's 100% relevant about why everybody is here. And I want to kind of frame that from an Air Force perspective. We're closing in on 80 years old as a service. And over those 80 years, we've done 3 major re-optimizations as a service. And we're in the midst of a 4th. So it's really, that's really about the why, right? So we look at that Cold War era of a very much large force structure. When we look at the threat that was out there at those days, and 2 major powers who essentially were, from a United States perspective and from an Air Force perspective, underpinned by strong nuclear deterrence, increased a strong conventional force structure presence. And during those decades, that generation, the galvanization of academia and the industrial base really provide us a technological overmatch that we got to use for a long period of time, whether that was from a GPS, a satellite space layer, whether that was stealth technologies, and a lot of other of great tech innovations that came out of that age. Fast forward into the unipolar moment, follow the Berlin Wall, probably pinpointed around the Desert Storm time frame, where we really kind of started seeing an Air Force downsizing from a peace dividend and becoming a little bit more finer tuned to a regional type escalation event. And then another couple of decades later, we move into post 9/11 scenarios and a global war on terrorism, where an Air Force again had to optimize itself to what the geopolitical context was, and what that meant for us was getting really small and really fine-tuned and functionally capable in very specific lanes, and being a rotational force structure. So here we are now into another great power competition moment. And the thing about history is it's a great looking glass, right? So we can look back. We've been here before. Okay, so what we know is we have to re-optimize again. And we're on a pathway to do that. And for us to do that, we have to create alignment across technology, industry, academia, and others from an Air Force perspective. So I think that context is very important. So I'm Brigadier General Jason Hogg, Deputy Director inside of Air Force Futures. Specifically, I own operational requirements across the entire Air Force and capability development. Air Force Futures, its functional role is it's at the headquarters of Air Force. Our 3-star Lieutenant General Harris reports directly to the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General Alvin. And we have about 500 or so personnel that do strategy, operational concepts, wargaming, analysis, experimentation, and then we get into requirements drafting and oversight of capability development across 6 major commands. Our Air Force Material Command, who owns all of our technology and acquisition responsibilities, and our major commands that represent the functional greatness of the Air Force, from Air Force Special Operations Command, Air Combat Command, Air Mobility Command, and Air Force Global Strike Command. And we are the integrator of all of those to ensure that we are looking across mission sets to prioritize our investments and not looking specifically into functional lanes, making functional bets. So that is Air Force Futures. That is, I think, the strategic context about why we're here and what matters, and why I'm here with you today.
Sir, that's a great overview of the mission. But maybe a little bit on the personal note side of things. Florida State, so you got a little bit of that Florida
That's right.
background.
That's right. Florida resident pretty much my entire life. I had a chance to go to Florida State University. And like any good 18-year-old joining the military and then getting that degree and then going off into the wild blue yonder, I've been fighting to get back to the great state of Florida for the better part of 30 years. I've been unsuccessful to date, but very happy to be here with you today.
But you started out in the Army.
I did. I was an Apache pilot for the Florida Army National Guard for about 5 years of my career. Such an exciting time, and then had the opportunity to transition over into the Air Force to fly F-16s for about 20 years, and that was the majority of my time in the cockpit, and then transition into Pentagon land.
Well, two more important questions. What's your call sign?
I go by Ike.
Ike, okay. And Top Gun 1 or Top Gun 2?
3.
3 is 3? You have the 3 already? Man, I must have missed one along the way.
We got to have another one.
All right. Well,
got to have another one.
So, Provost Bejar, I was a little background on the university as I was doing my research for the panel. You are the provost that provides strategic direction for the university. 56,000 students, 2,000 faculty, 11 colleges, and 30 labs. So I wanted to put that in context of the military. So I, again, did a little research. If you were commanding an Air Force unit, you would be commanding at what we call a major command level, or a MAJCOM. In other words, you would be a 4-star general. So in terms of the stage, you're the ranking officer here on stage today. So it's impressive to have you here with us today.
That's why I'm sitting appropriately to the left.
But I don't have a jumpsuit. Just going to put that out there.
Well, let's get into, again, the last thing I want to do is, it's always great to know your audience. So, first of all, show of hands, veterans in the room. If you're a veteran, please raise your hand. Well, we salute you and we thank you for your service. And if you're a veteran entrepreneur that's out here starting a company, a veteran-led startup, go ahead and stand up. Let the audience see who you are. If you're one of those gritty entrepreneurs with a military background, we want to recognize you because you're the essence of what this topic is about. That nexus of the private sector, academia, and the DoD. So with that. Getting into some of the relevance here, there's a lot of financial people, there's a lot of investment talk around this conference. And, again, why the Department of Defense? And, if the Department of Defense was a Fortune company, it would be Fortune 1, okay? The budget of the Department of Defense is larger than the revenue of Walmart. It's larger than the revenue of Amazon. And sir, you play an important role in managing some of that budget, especially on sort of the research and development side of things. Maybe you could talk a little bit about, some of that.
Yeah, no, that's good. Rough numbers, $200 billion for a service, and from an RDT&E and procurement perspective, probably ballparking 60 to 70-ish $1 billion. So, our challenge is, it sounds like a lot of money, right? It sounds like a lot of money. I could probably spend that in a day, but there are so many requirements out there that we could go after in order to close on our gaps, and that's really our challenge. Our challenge is to create a construct in which we are ensuring that we're maximizing the return on investment for the next dollar that we spend. And we do that through a force design process. So the Air Force calls this the One Air Force Force Design. We do have an unclassified version of this, of course, and really it's just to help maybe potential people out there, investors kind of trying to circle in on what areas that they wanted to be able to play in. But this is what we use to kind of set our left to right limits and war game and analyze and find our gaps in the areas that we want to invest in. And we don't have time to go into it in depth, but just a quick snapshot. It's essentially a threat level, low, medium, high. If you think of a y-axis, if you think of an x-axis of a geopolitical map that goes from west to east with North America across the Atlantic to Europe to Middle East, Southwest Asia, and into Asia. And you think about the spectrum of conflict that goes across those, take that threat intensity line as you're over North America, and it's pretty much in a low threat domain. Going into Europe and Eastern Europe, you see that spike up in that medium to medium high, back down around the Middle East, and then up to a precipice over Asia. And so what we do is when we're trying to optimize a force structure, again, when we're spending $200 billion a year to optimize a force structure, it's really only three levers. There's force structure, there's modernization, and there's readiness. I said, so when you're making these bets, especially trying to figure out on certain times, we need to be able to achieve certain things. So whether that's in 2027, we need to achieve certain things, in 2030, and 2033, and 2037, we have specific missions that we need to be able to do in order to preserve strategic deterrence across the board and provide optionality for political decisions, right? So that map that I kind of pointed out, we essentially take that highest point. If you took that highest point over, in that Asia area, and you tried to optimize an entire air force for that one area, I'd probably send about 2,000 F-47s and war game that and see how they did. The problem with that is, did anybody see the release of the F-47, which is the next generation air dominance fighter, the 6th generation fighter for the Air Force that was just announced 2 weeks ago? So I'm using that as an analogy here. In a fictitious wargaming event, we wouldn't do it because if we did 2,000 NGADs, nobody else would have a service because that would spend the entire department's money. The point is, as we look at those, then we have to figure out the attributes of the force structure that we need to operate across that entire spectrum. And so it goes the next second, third, and fourth level of that. But that's what we use to be able to help wargame analyze, develop the attributes of the different types of force structures that we need, and then ultimately get to the gaps and transmit those out to our mission partners from the tech side, from academia, and et cetera, to be able to place the bets we need to get that maximum return on investment.
So for those of you that maybe got in here a little bit early, you might have noticed that there was actually 2 other chairs up here on the stage that they removed just before we started. We were supposed to have 2 other panelists, but they actually got doged right before we started. So, I would not be the moderator that I think I am if I didn't bring that topic up and give us a chance to discuss it because it's relevant. Sir, people really do want to know. We see this stuff on the news, right?
Yeah.
But how is it impacting your mission, the warfighter, and what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, that's great. Great question. So, we got 3 strategic things that we really have to do as an Air Force. We need to strategically deter, we have to defend the homeland, and we have to project power forward to achieve political objectives. So, with a new administration and, from a DOGE lens, that doesn't change anything we do. If anything, what we do is we get more optimized into the areas that we really need to be spending for the next big, where does that next dollar go? So with regards to, budget drills or moving things to other portfolios or other services, we welcome all of that. And essentially, you just tell me of what I need to stop doing and what I need to start doing better, and we're ready to optimize.
So you say, we've heard the word optimize, we've used the word innovate here, and one of our theses at Stony Lonesome Group is that the government needs to start to move at the speed of innovation versus the speed of government. When we're starting to acquire things that are in the domains of artificial intelligence and autonomy and cybersecurity, where it's moving so rapidly, we've got to start to innovate faster. So, Provost Béjar, where do you see some opportunities for a university like FIU to get involved in that innovation, enhance that innovation, become a catalyst to the innovation to assist in the mission of the Department of Defense?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that the general mentioned, right, was the response and the reaction, if you will, to the DOGE effort. The university also is ready to be nimble, flexible. We pride ourselves on that agility as a young institution. And so part of that effort is really engaging in realigning our efforts so that we can provide that 3X, 5X, and 10X on those strategies around cybersecurity, around IA, on resilient infrastructures, and all the work that we are doing. We also, at FIU particularly, are reframing innovation. It's a word, everybody uses it, everybody here in the audience is here because they're innovators, they know innovators, or they want to innovate. We really need to unpack that in higher education so that it is not a linear process and that it's transformative and synergistic from day one. So if as a university we are partnered with combatant commands from day one, understand their mission, understand their roles, and understand their responsibilities, we can prepare our students, future leaders, future safeguards of national security at a policy level as well as a technical level at the outset.
So you guys, FIU, are actually, you have a contract with Southcom, which is just south of Miami for, some of the people here in the audience. And it's, again, something that makes Florida so relevant to the conversation. There's over 20 military bases in Florida alone, 3 major commands, Southcom just south of Miami, and then over on the Tampa side where I'm at, we have Special Operations Command and Central Command. So what I've been able to experience at Stony Lonesome Group in collaborating with FIU are some of the great programs you have where you're developing that next generation of talent that's coming up. You've got a fellowship program specifically training people to be intelligence analysts, whether they decide to go in and wear the uniform or whether they serve as sort of a civilian side of thing. Those programs and their ability for those students to come in and work on real world mission focused projects, for example, the work that the Institute of Public Policy is doing, and that allowing to get some of that intelligence down to the warfighter level. I mean, I've been able to see that interaction between the university and the Department of Defense firsthand, and our job as strategic capital is to sort of provide some of the funding to the technology that we want to get in the hands of students, because they're the next generation, they're the true innovators. You can see the gleam in their eye, and I mean, that was probably, to me, the highlight of that last program I participated in, was meeting some of those young people that have that sort of, that fire in their belly to go out there and do great things, and hopefully we'll see some of them in uniform, someday, sir.
Yeah, look, piling onto that, right? You're talking about re-gearing up, the changing character war, some of the things we've seen coming out of Ukraine. This is just a great opportunity to show us that from a capability development perspective, like, we do have to re-gear, retool some of the ways that we go about doing things to field capabilities faster across that valley of death. And one of those is exactly what Provost is talking about, and it's that extreme teaming concept. And we have very deliberate, from the Air Force perspective, teammates in academia and technology where we team our operators with, right? Because we talked about, what do you need? You need a technologist, academia, you need an operator. You need kind of an intelligence assessment of the environment so you understand the threat that you're dealing with and what gap you're trying to close. And then you need the money person, right, to make sure that you're getting the capital you need on time, on target, to be able to deliver the program management across that valley. So if you have that team together, realistically, it almost doesn't matter what kind of contract vehicle you're running or what timeline you have to do it on. I think the secret to success is a strong, extreme teaming that we discussed there.
Well, we got a little bit of a late start here because it was after lunch, and I see time is winding down and 30 minutes went by fast. So we're going to kind of roll into some of our closing remarks here. But before I do that, I've just got to sort of acknowledge a couple people in the room here that sort of were the visionaries for bringing dual use to eMERGE. And I'm going to ask a good friend and partner, Tyler Johnson, please stand up and just wave to the crowd here for sort of being the visionary that said, this is an amazing conference here in Miami. How can we make it better? And I certainly think that with the turnout and the type of, the caliber of people that we're attracting to this is absolutely amazing. And then I certainly want to, compliment Melissa and Manny for embracing that vision and being bold enough to bring that in here to embrace defense when some other unnamed conferences have sort of shunned it. So I did want to sort of get that in. But with that said, Provost Bejar, we're going to start with you for any kind of sort of closing thoughts, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I invite everyone to go by the FIU booth. The exhibition is right outside the main stage. And it really just highlights the importance of that dual use. We didn't have time, as you mentioned, Sean, to kind of go through that. But the dual use technologies, critically important. The work that we're doing in additive materials and metals, the work we're doing in transforming antennas, stackable, foldable for immediate field deployment to protect our soldiers, but also for civilian use and next generation 6G and beyond, right? All of that is critically important, and really working through that. I do want to say, because we're here, we're getting close to the 3:05 hour, which is the cafecito time. We recognize in Miami, I say that, right, with a little grin, but we have a sense of urgency in Miami. Also in Largo, Florida, we'll say that. Sean mentioned we're right outside, from here, we're 5 miles from Southcom. We have an outpost in Tampa, Florida, right, that's just 20 miles from CENTCOM and SOCOM. And on 6th and New Jersey Avenue, we're 5 miles from the Pentagon, because we've got to be laser focused on national security. It is critically important. The best defense is a strong offense. The more we work together, again, as the capital of Latin America, this is critically important that we stabilize and that we work on identifying and preventing the next generation of maligned actors who certainly have an interest in what we're doing, what we're exploring, and beating us at that game. So we've got to work together on those extreme teams.
Oh, I love it.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for the effort it took to come down here with all the things going on. And you might not know the reason he's in a flight suit is he actually borrowed an F-16. He came down here in his lunch hour. He's got to have it back, so we are going to wrap this up quick. But please go ahead and give us some closing remarks before you get back in the jet, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So we talked about the why and why we're here today. I think really, though, my responsibility is to set an ecosystem in which you, the investors, the innovators, the customers, the technologists, that you understand clearly how to plug into. And so that ultimately we can capture what it is that you're creating, and we have the ecosystem to be able to bring that into prototype experimentation and across the valley on the timeline that it needs to be done, so that we can maximize that return on investment for that next dollar we spend. Really a pleasure to be here with you today, and thank you all for what you do.
So my last comments on that is that, recently the commanding general of SOCOM, General Fenton, put out his soft Renaissance thought piece white paper, and he basically called private capital a national advantage. Seeing the private sector rally behind defense and innovation has been amazing. And then you bring in academia, which is what we in the military would call a force multiplier or a catalyst that piles on top of that to provide some fuel and some energy. But at the end of the day, it truly is about mission and getting better technology in the hands of our warfighters to maintain that strategic competitive advantage. And again, I'm going to go back to one of my opening comments. The reason it's so relevant to the people in this room is that freedom is not free. And there's an opportunity for we as Americans to invest in that, whether it's capital that comes in from the private sector or sending our sons and daughters to institutions and universities and encouraging them to pursue studies and innovation to contribute that way, or possibly to go ahead and decide to wear the uniform and serve that way. So we don't have time for question and answers. We appreciate the audience time. And I want to thank my esteemed panel for sharing some amazing insights today. So thank you.
Thank you.